Thing number two this morning, we got to go from retail back to technology because shares of chip equipment maker Applied Materials, those shares are actually not much changed this morning. They're down just about 2/3% after that company reported its numbers. The president and CEO, Gary Dickerson, says despite demand being higher than ever, the company continues to be constrained by ongoing, of course, supply chain issues. So you see the miss there on adjusted earnings per share. You see the miss on revenue. And the company's coming out with a third quarter forecast in which it says it will make at most $1.95 a share. Analysts have been looking for $2.05. So that's part of the issue that we're watching for Applied Materials.
Yeah, it kind of in the backdrop this week because of what we were tracking with retail was the chip sector, and particularly in semiconductors, looking at not just how chips are going to be manufactured going forward from here, but for a company like Applied Materials, how they're going to meet demand. We had also heard from Analog Devices earlier this week. They reported earnings. And so with all of this kind of taking place in the backdrop, we know that there's also the trip that President Biden is taking right now overseas in order to really understand where some of that manufacturing can actually be brought back to the U.S. as well. You've got some of the initiatives that the administration has moved forward to and out of a need right now in order to shore up the supply chain. Everything from the handset device that you carry on a day in, day out basis, all the way to the future of electric vehicles, heavily dependent on these chips being available to be purchased and then additionally put into so many of those products as well. And so I think going forward from here, whatever he garners from that trip in terms of the production that we're going to see from companies like and manufacturers' fabrication processes like TSMC, even like Samsung, where we're going to see some of these new factory operations pop up in the Southwest U.S. That particularly is going to be where you see more companies like Applied Materials, like NVIDIA, like Lam Research, even as you're seeing here on the screen. Many of those ramping up their production, and Samsung even as well. Got to keep them in the conversation too because of their own intentions.
Yeah, definitely. So just to bring it back to Applied Materials for a bit, very similar story to what we heard it felt like from Cisco.
Yeah. Except
Except the reaction is a little bit different. Cisco, there was a more negative reaction to those numbers. But again, the message seems to be, once again, from AMAT, just like it was from Cisco, the demand is there, so the supply chain is the issue. So coming back to that supply chain, this is President Biden's first visit to South Korea, so the first summit with the South Korean president there. He is touring that Samsung plant in South Korea in anticipation of Samsung building its plant in Texas. And so sort of understanding what the best practices are and how Samsung can potentially improve the supply chain issues here in the U.S. as well. By the way, Samsung responsible for a third of global memory chip production. At the same time, while President Biden is there, he's renewing his call for Congress to pass a China competition bill, which includes, among other things, $52 billion in funding for domestic semiconductor research and manufacturing. So you have what we're hearing from the chip makers, the chip equipment makers like AMAT, coupled with this sort of political push, right. To give funding to that supply chain issue here in the United States. And, you know, obviously we'll see if they end up getting that funding.
Yeah, exactly.